A while ago, I made a video talking about how Bubblegum was the true villain of Adventure Time. However, if I were to remake that video, I would definitely change some things and add others. Even though the bad actions and questionable decisions I pointed out about her character were true, I believe I was quite shallow in some aspects, especially regarding her redemption, which, let's be honest, wasn't very fair on my part. Rewatching certain episodes of Adventure Time today, I believe that, in the end, Bubblegum actually became a better person than she was before. So, today, we're going to take a look at the moment that marks the beginning of Bonnie's redemption when she had just been kicked out of the Candy Kingdom and realized that she had lost everything she had built. That said, this is practically a part 1. I'll still make another video to wrap up this topic. Marceline goes to the Candy Kingdom and finds out from King of Oh that Bubblegum is no longer the princess there and that she's actually living in a small wooden house not too far from the kingdom. Marceline then goes to see her and immediately questions why she hadn't told her anything. Bubblegum responds that she was embarrassed. All of this frustration over losing the Candy Kingdom and the fear of being seen in a moment of weakness, especially by someone like Marceline, stem from the fact that Bubblegum feels like she has to be seen as strong all the time. And it's really interesting how so many people are like this too. They live in a constant struggle to maintain the image of someone unshakable, keeping everything to themselves, trying to deal with their problems alone just so they don't appear weak. But all of this builds up until, eventually, it just becomes too much. Bubblegum then makes a joke about Marceline but immediately apologizes, saying that she's starting over and trying to be a less bad person. And it's really great that she's able to recognize that she was a bad person in the past and actually say it out loud. This is definitely a huge first step in becoming a better person moving forward. Admitting that was extremely important. Starting over could help her understand things she didn't before. It could help her think in a different way and see things from a new perspective, one less distorted by power and results. Bubblegum would have the chance to look at the mistakes she had made and understand why she lost everything she had spent her entire life building. Consequently, she could abandon the mindset that had led her to that point. She then mentions the presence of some creatures called worms that had been destroying her pumpkin patch every night. And it's very clear that getting rid of these creatures was extremely important to Bonnie, so important that it even seemed a little obsessive. Marceline comments on the pumpkins, and Bubblegum says that they were the citizens of her garden kingdom and that they were 100% loyal. This perfectly reflects her frustration at betrayed by the Candy people and also shows how deeply attached she still was to being the princess of a kingdom. And honestly, that's completely understandable, considering how long things had been that way for her. The worms soon appear to devour the pumpkins, and the two chase them until they reach a mine that seemed to be quite old. It's then revealed that they used to go to this mine together a long time ago. Marceline seems to be really enjoying the nostalgia, reminiscing about how they used to tell stories and jokes while walking along the tracks, and how she once managed to convince Bonnie to graffiti a wall there even though Bonnie was always the rule follower. But Bonnie, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be having fun at all. In fact, she looks really tense, giving off the impression that something about this whole situation is making her uncomfortable. Marceline then jokingly tells Bubblegum that she was always prepared, but this ends up irritating her a little. Bubblegum responds that she had to always be prepared for everything and that it wasn't always like this. There was a time when she didn't have to worry so much because the Candy Kingdom was much smaller and more manageable. But then, it kept growing non-stop, and every time a disaster happened, she was the one who had to fix it. Like it or not, everything was ultimately her responsibility. These words make it clear how completely exhausted Bonnie was at that point, how incapable and scared she felt after losing control. Because due to some past traumas, being in control of everything had become a synonym for security. It was what prevented her from getting hurt. And once that sense of control was taken from her, she was obviously left without solid ground, confused, insecure. That fear, that anxiety of losing control, whatever the reason, was the main factor that turned her into a cold and ruthless person over time. Because, no matter the price, as long as it kept her in control and prevented her from being hurt, then it wasn't too high a cost. Suddenly, a giant worm appears one they can't defeat. It forces them to run. Amid all the chaos, Bubblegum drops her hat, and it gets left behind. At a certain point, the two get trapped in part of the mine and stumble upon some graffiti Bubblegum had made a long time ago. Marceline starts talking about it, and that's when Bonnie can't take it anymore. She breaks down in tears. She says she lost her hat, she lost her people, she lost her home. she lost Marceline, and she couldn't even get rid of a few little worms. In that moment, we can clearly see it, the guilt, the regret, the anger, the sadness, all of it reflected on Bonnie's face. She was a completely broken person, with absolutely nothing under control, and that was terrifying. She says she tried, she really tried. She thought that if she distanced herself from everything else and focused only on work, everything would be okay. But in the end, she still ended up here. Sometimes we get lost in what seems to be a priority. We think we're doing the right thing, making the best choices for a greater good, believing that, in the end, all the effort will be worth it. But then, we realize it wasn't like that we made mistakes, that we acted wrongly, that we became worse people in the process, all while thinking we were doing the best we could. She thought that focusing on work or on anything else would help, but in the end, it only made everything worse. Avoiding it didn't work, running away didn't work, and it doesn't seem fair, but these are the consequences, no matter how painful. And that's where the importance of starting over comes in, the importance of picking up the pieces and changing. I know it doesn't seem easy, and I can guarantee you, it isn't easy. It hurts, it wounds your pride, and sometimes, it takes a long time, but it's worth it. It's always possible to start over. Bonnie then apologizes to Marceline for being a terrible friend for so long. The two finally make peace and escape the mine before it collapses. After some time, they return home and finally get some rest. I think that was Bonnie Bell's first step toward redemption, because in that moment, she let go of a huge burden, and she realized that in the end, she hadn't lost everything.